Duryodhan showed his irritation at this uncalled for generosity of his father, but the pledge had been given by the king and could not be taken back. The five brothers and Draupadi went into exile. During their 12 years in the forest, the Pandavas lived as hermits. They practiced austerities, mingled with holy men, and received from them spiritual enlightenment. The tedium of their wandering life was mitigated by their loyal devotion of Draupadi and the indissoluble bonds of friendship among the brothers themselves. During this period, Krishna and Arjuna spent a great deal of time together discussing God, the soul, and the hereafter. The 13th year of their exile was spent in the city where the five brothers worked as menials of King Bharat. This critical year passed without their being recognized. When the period of exile was over, a delicate situation arose. For 13 years, Duryodhan had enjoyed unrivaled lordship of northern India. He had consolidated his position by forming alliances with many kings. He controlled the army and the treasury, and the five brothers were practically beggars when they returned from the forest. Naturally, Duryodhan has loathed to part with his ill-gotten power and possessions. The elders, however, wanted a peaceful settlement between the Pandavas and the Kauravas. The restoration of their legitimate kingdom to the five sons of Pandu was the minimum demand of justice, and Yudhishthir was willing to make peace on these terms, forgiving and forgetting all the insults inflicted by Duryodhan on him, his brothers, and their wife. Bhishma and Drona wholeheartedly supported this policy of reconciliation, and everyone emphasized the evils of a fratricidal war. Krishna too strongly urged Duryodhan to return to Yudhishthir his rightful kingdom. The plighted word of King Dhritarashtra on the eve of the Pandavas' departure was recalled. Duryodhan had no just claim in denying the Pandavas their legitimate kingdom. To all the requests of the elders and the wise, the wicked prince gave only one reply. In his opinion, Yudhishthir had lost his kingdom in an honorable game, as though he had lost it on the battlefield. The whole country now belonged to Duryodhan alone, and he was capable of defending it. In case he died on the battlefield defending his own rights, he would go straightway to heaven. In his view, the ancestral kingdom could be enjoyed either by the Pandavas or by the Kauravas, but never by both. One party must live like beggars, both could not rule at the same time. To Krishna's repeated request to concede half the kingdom, or five villages at least, Duryodhan stubbornly replied that he would not relinquish even as much land as could be lifted on the point of a needle. Nothing more could be said. War became inevitable, destiny must be fulfilled. The wicked counsellors of Duryodhan were jubilant, for they were certain of the annihilation of the Pandavas. The wise, however, had not the slightest doubt that in the end righteousness would triumph, and they knew, too, which side was righteous. The Pandavas and the Kauravas appealed to their friends and relatives to support them in what each described as just a war. To this appeal in the name of knighthood all the kings and princes responded. Feverish preparations were in progress. Krishna was the natural friend and ally of Arjuna, but Duryodhan too coveted his friendship. Both went to Krishna's palace to seek his help and were told that he was asleep. Duryodhan entered the bedroom and sat on a high stool near Krishna's head. Arjun followed and sat in a humble manner at Krishna's feet. They awaited his awakening from sleep. As Krishna opened his eyes, his glance fell on Arjun. Duryodhan declared that he had entered the bedchamber first and therefore had the first claim on Krishna's friendship. Krishna said with a smile that he had seen Arjun first, but he did not want to disappoint either of them and had in his mind two proposals. He could give to one party his own picked soldiers, tens of thousands in number, fully armed and equipped; to the other he could promise his own mere presence, being himself unarmed and resolved not to fight. Under no condition, he said, Would he handle a weapon in this war or take any active part in it? The rival cousins were asked to make their choice. He had foreseen that Duryodhan, blinded by greed and lust, would never seek the presence of the divine Krishna. Arjun, in a voice choked with emotion, asked for his presence near him as his unarmed charioteer, and Duryodhan, on his part, was delighted to avail himself of the service of his brave fighting men. Asked by Krishna why he was satisfied with his useless presence, Arjun said, I know that you alone are able to kill all our enemies, but I myself want to destroy the forces of evil and earn the glory. So I accepted you and not your battalions. It is my desire that you remain always with me as my charioteer. Yudhishthir could not easily reconcile himself to the war among brothers. But Krishna said to him, I have tried my utmost to establish peace, but I have not succeeded. Duryodhan is under the power of unrighteousness. People will not blame you for this war. You are guiltless before God and them. King Dhritarashtra accepted the decision of his sons to fight as the unalterable decree of destiny. He saw that before God's will, human power was futile. Both Bhishma and Drona had been for many years in the service of King Dhritarashtra. Karna, though a half-brother of the Pandavas, had been the recipient of many favors from Duryodhana. Further, he bore a grudge against Arjun because the two were almost peers in the military arts. Thus, at the call of duty and honor, these three great warriors espoused the side of Duryodhana, though to the insight of Bhishma and Drona, the outcome of the battle could not have been remained hidden. At last, the fateful day arrived. Both sides assembled on the historic plain of Kurukshetra, hallowed from time out of mind by many religious sacrifices, and selected again and again in the subsequent history of India as a battlefield for the control of the political destiny of the country. Bhishma became the generalissimo of Duryodhana, and the Dhrishtadyumna commanded the Pandav army. The military leaders, according to their rank and position, mounted chariots or elephants or horses. Each warrior waved his pennon carrying his own cognizance. Everyone was equipped with his own favorite weapon, a bow, a sword, or a club, and each carried in his hand a conch shell with which he sounded the call to battle. The mighty armies draw up against each other were like two vast oceans of human heads. King Dhritarashtra wanted to be informed of the events on the battlefield. The blind king was offered special sight by the sage Vyas, but he refused the boon, for he knew that the death of his near and dear ones would be more than he could bear. Therefore, Sanjay acted as his reporter. Since the battlefield was too vast for any mortal eye and too complex for any human mind, Sanjay was given supernatural vision by a boon of Vyas to see and hear all that happened there. It was indeed a wondrous sight. The best of India's manhood was there. Banners of various hues waved in the wind, garments of the combatants were colorful and variegated. The sound of conchs and drums was like tempest sweeping over the forest or a tidal wave in the ocean. The trumpeting of elephants, the neighing of horses, the blare of trumpets, and the clash of cymbals created a tumult too great for human ears. The warriors had staked their lives to win victory for their respective sides, and who were these warriors? In happier days they had been friends, comrades, and playfellows, now confronted each other youths who were as brothers and elders venerated by all for their age and wisdom. As the combatants stood poised, Arjuna asked Krishna to drive his chariot into the space between the armies, a sort of no man's land. Casting his eyes around him, he saw assembled the very flower of India's knighthood, those to whom he was bound by 1,000 ties of love, respect, and affection. He must wade through their blood in order to regain the kingdom. Eyes swimming in tears and voice faltering, he said to Krishna, his charioteer, "O Krishna, at the sight of these, my kinsmen, assembled here eager to give battle, my limbs fail, and my mouth is parched. My body is shaken, and my hair stands on end. The bow Gandiv slips from my hand, and my skin is on fire. I cannot hold myself steady. My mind seems to whirl. O Keshav, I see omens of evil, nor do I perceive, O Krishna, any good in slaughtering my own people in battle. I desire neither victory nor empire nor even any pleasure. These, O Madhusudan, I would not kill, though they should kill me even for the sake of sovereignty over the three worlds. How much less for this earth?" Arjun enumerated to Krishna all the evils that befell society from war, perfect arguments used by pacifists even of modern times. He concluded, "Far better would it be for me if the sons of Dhritarashtra, weapons in hand, should slay me in the battle, unarmed and unresisting." Krishna instantly perceived Arjun's temporary confusion, which any mortal might feel when faced with such an overwhelming situation. The Pandav warrior had forgotten where the path of duty lay, but Krishna, great psychologist that he was, knew it was no time for platitudes. The depressed soul must be lashed into action. Striking Arjuna at his most sensitive point, the honor of a Kshatriya, Sri Krishna said, "In this crisis, O Arjun, whence comes such lowness of spirit, unbecoming to an Aryan, dishonorable, and an obstacle to the attaining of heaven?" The real cause of Arjun's confusion was his ignorance, his lack of discrimination between the real and the unreal, spirit and matter, soul and body. Such darkness of ignorance can be removed only by the light of knowledge. Sri Krishna instructed Arjuna about the nature of the soul and the meaning of death. Even as the embodied self passes in this body through the stages of childhood, youth, and old age, so does it pass into another body. Calm souls are not bewildered by this. The unreal never is. The real never ceases to be. The conclusions about these two is truly perceived by the seers of truth. That by which all this is pervaded, know to be imperishable. None can cause the destruction of that which is immutable. Only the bodies of which this eternal, imperishable, incomprehensible self is the indweller are said to have an end. Fight, therefore, O Bharat, he who looks on the self as the slayer, and he who looks on the self as the slain, neither of these apprehends aright. The self slays not, nor is slain. It is never born, nor does it ever die, nor having once been, does it again cease to be. Unborn, eternal, permanent, and primeval, it is not slain when the body is slain. Even as a person casts off worn-out clothes and puts on others that are new, so the embodied self casts off worn-out bodies and enters into others that are new. Weapons cut it not, fire burns it not, water wets it not, and wind does not wither it. Krishna explained to his royal disciple the meaning of action and non-action, the nature of the Godhead and its manifestation, the different paths of liberation, and the way to the summum bonum. Throughout the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna addresses Arjuna with different epithets, each one bearing a special meaning. The purpose of the teacher is to remind Arjuna either of his royal lineage, or noble ancestry, or physical might, or great power of self-control, or the like. Thus Krishna seeks to stir up noble feelings in the mind of his rejected disciple. Arjuna too, while addressing Sri Krishna, uses different epithets associated with the spiritual nature of the divine teacher. The setting of the magnificent dialogue could not have been more appropriate and sublime. A battlefield where all are on the borderline between life and death, and where one realizes the transitory nature even of the most cherished objects in the world. The moment could not have been more auspicious. Arjun's mind was one pointed in view of the imminent crisis, and eager to know what lay beyond. We'll continue the next part. Thank you so much for listening. Audio by Anamika. This is Anamika Mukherji, reading to you the story of Mahabharata as written in the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Nikhilananda and published by FP Classics.